So today we're going to look at doing some base shoe molding. This house has white MDF trim work for the baseboards, door and window casing, and the base shoe. So the base shoe is this molding that goes at the low edge of the base. It's installed after baseboards are in place, and it's only found in areas where there's a hard floor surface. So the base shoe hasn't been installed here yet. The reason it's used at hard floor surfaces is because you can see some gaps between the flooring and the wall. And so it's really difficult sometimes to get the flooring tight to the wall or tight to the base. And depending on when the baseboards are installed, you may just need to add something to help conceal any gaps or inconsistencies. So base shoe is used for that. This base shoe is flat. It's 3/8 of an inch thick, and it's really easy to install because it's flat. It doesn't have much of a profile to it. So the tool setup required is a miter saw and a nail gun, and that's basically all you need. Some various hand tools and other things, which I'll show you little tips and tricks along the way. All right, so we're gonna look at a pantry here, and one of the tips for installing baseboards and base shoe is to take several measurements and cut a lot of pieces that'll go in sequence and then install all of those, rather than measuring the location, making your cut, and cutting each piece, installing it, then going on to the next one. So I always carry around a piece of cardboard or a scrap chunk of baseboard, something to write on. And so for this location, I want to measure from the door casing to the corner tight, which I'm getting 49 3/4. So I've already got that written down here. Then I want to move to my next spot, which this pantry has shelving that goes and has a leg that comes down that separates part of it. So here I'm measuring tight, which is 49 1/4 shy, but then I need to subtract 3/8 of an inch, which is the thickness of the base shoe. So 49 1/4 shy would be 48 7/8 shy. And then the flooring was cut around this leg, which I don't like, but had to be done because the shelves were installed before the flooring was. Because this shelving has a rounded edge at the front, I don't want to wrap this in base, just because that's a lot, base shoe, that's a lot of extra work. So what I would do here is, after all the shoe is installed, before the final coat of paint goes on, I would just take some white caulking and caulk this joint. So then we get our next piece measured up, which is 13 7/8. And we're going around, I like to go left to right in a room. That's my preference. It usually works out that way. but sometimes when you do this, you want to look at where your difficult cuts are going to be. And with this stuff being flat, almost all the cuts are easy cuts. So then we've got 49 and 3/4 strong, but we're subtracting 3/8. So we got 49 and 3/8 strong. And then this last piece to close out this room butts up to the door casing, but because the base shoe is 3/8 of an inch thick and this only sits about 1/8 of an inch proud, or actually closer to 1/4 proud, the base shoe would stick out further than it. So we'll do what we call a return cut on this. And so when I measure this, I'm getting 29 1/4 strong, so that'd be 28 7/8 strong, and then the right side of this has a return, so I'm writing an R on it. So anytime I've got a special cut, anything other than a straight cut, I'll mark it. So a return or a miter. If I needed to do copes, I would mark a cope, but with this stuff being flat, getting caulked and painted, there's no need to do any copes with this type of base shoe. Alright, so I've got all my pieces cut, and if you get some practice with doing this and you get pretty good at taking your measurements and making your cuts, you won't have to go back and recut anything. So you'll fit your pieces in and shoot them into place. Now, I really like cordless nail guns for trim work like this, because I don't have to haul around a hose, air compressor. It's just, I feel like it's a little bit quicker. Now, not every finished carpenter believes that cordless is the way to go, but I have become a big fan. And for these, I'm using 18 gauge brad nails that are 1 1/4 inches long, because this material is only 3/8 of an inch, and I'm just shooting it into the base, so I don't have to worry about hitting studs. With this flooring, it's okay if the nail goes down into the floor. I don't want anything too long though, because if I hit another nail that's in the wall, or if this were tile and I shoot down at too much of an angle, it's gonna curl. So I want, not a super long nail, because that'll reduce the likelihood of it curling back. Another reason I like the cordless, because it's got the light, so it makes it kind of nice when you're doing closets or pantries like this, where everything is a little darker down low. Now this piece I got a little too long, so probably because this leg moves a little bit, so I was pushing it one way and then pushing it another, and now it's too long. So I will have to make a recut. Alright, so I've recut my piece. I can get it to fit right in there. fitting them tight. With trim work, you always want it to be a little long, like baseboards and base shoe like this. You want it to be a little long rather than just a hair short. And then this here, you can see, is the return cut. So I put a 45-degree angle on it, and it returns it back so you don't have a sharp edge meeting the casing. So you can see here. That finishes out like, just looks a little bit cleaner than if we were to leave a square edge. All right, and this pantry is done. All right, so here we've got an outside corner, and so I've got my pieces cut and fit. And what I like to do with these, and you should always glue your corners with all types of trim, but one thing that I like to do with baseboards and base shoe is, instead of regular wood glue, I'll use something that sets up a lot quicker. So I like to use this Rapid Fuse. It's a 30-second super glue, basically. And other people like CA glues. Some of those require an activator, and I just don't want to carry around 2 bottles of things. So this fits in my tool pouch easily. I just put a little bit on one edge, fit the 2 pieces together, make sure that my miter looks pretty good, and then instead of sitting here and holding it, waiting for it to set up, I like to use miter clamps. I just throw a clamp on there, and then usually what I do with these pieces is I'll move on to another area, cut those pieces, get them maybe installed, and then I'll come back and I'll nail that in before I take the clamp off. Now this piece over here is a little bit different as far as the returns go, because the baseboard stops at the stairs. So what I like to do here is another style of return where you cut a 45 degree and then another 45 degree piece on the end. That's the thickness of the trim here. And you can see the profile of the base shoe has a rounded edge. And so this helps continue that along so you don't have a rounded edge going to a squared edge. The other way to do a return is what I showed you earlier with the 45 degree angle that doesn't go all the way. And so I like to do that where it butts into the casing. So that's how that piece would be finished out.